Plus mortgage today. 888-220-6200. Refi or purchase. 888-220-6200.
Private Bank of Buckhead, 3 Piedmont Center, Atlanta, Georgia, 30305. Actual terms may vary. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender, NMLS number 758-195. Call toll free for credit costs and terms.
Some professional con artists are coming clean. The story from CBS's Bill Whitney.
It's a scam. So said a former psychic to New York State's parole board. The New York Times says women convicted of ripping off gullible clients are confessing their evil ways in an attempt to win early release from prison. The woman who admitted being a scam artist took more than $159,000 from one client to chase an evil spirit. Another woman told the parole board she lied when she persuaded a client to give her $14,500 for a rock. She claimed it was a meteorite from NASA. Bill Whitney, CBS News.
In Moorhead, Kentucky, Rowan County Clerk Kim Davis closed her office today ahead of a planned protest rally. People upset that she's refusing to grant marriage licenses to gay couples, citing her religious objections under the First Amendment. Clerk Davis is asking the Supreme Court to step into the controversy. Gary Nunn, CBS News.
Sunny to partly cloudy today, high 91, mainly clear skies tonight, low 70. It will be humid tomorrow with a blend of clouds and sunshine, high 91, partly cloudy skies tomorrow night, low 70. Monday, expect a blend of clouds and sunshine, high 93. It will be sunny to partly cloudy on Tuesday, high 93. I'm AccuWeather's Jeremy Pearson.
It's Kevin Miller. Monday morning on First News. Windows 10 is out. There have been over 75 million downloads thus far. Dan Harpool from Complete Computing has been working with it. He'll give us some of the specific insight. Markets have been nuts. What to expect next? We're going to talk to Jill Schlesinger about that. Are Little Rock police driving around in vehicles that are unsafe? We're going to find out. Dr. Jay Gohagen will be in too with the Baptist Health Heartbeat Update. Plus, we've got your chance to win a pair of Kelly Clarkson tickets. It's all a part of First News Monday morning, 6 till 9 o'clock on News Radio 102.9 KARN.
Let's go. Make no excuses now. I'm talking here and now. I'm talking here and now. Let's go. Let's go.
This is Beyond the Box, Real Estate Radio, with certified real estate expert and mortgage planning specialist Steven Blackwood. Call Steven now with your real estate or mortgage question, locally at 501-433-0092, and free long distance at 1-800-264-0092.
Welcome, listeners. This is Steven Blackwood, and we are live in the studio today, Beyond the Box. That's right. If you're a regular listener, you know that I do not own a box. I can't stand the thoughts of being in a box or having a lid put on a box, and the thought of tape on that lid causes me to sweat. So I just stay beyond the box, and we're here to talk real estate and mortgage finance. Today I've got a special guest here, Mr. Kendal Grooms. Kendal was with us with me a couple of weeks ago, and we were discussing a recent article or a recent case here in Little Rock about disclosure and the importance of disclosure to both the buyer and the seller when in a residential real estate transaction, and what's important for you as the consumer to know. And Kendal, thanks for coming back, man.
Well, thanks for having me back.
It'll be interesting if anybody has any follow-up questions from a couple of weeks ago. And I believe that you've got more information on that case. Can you tell us, tell the listeners a little, not specific on the case? I don't want to go anywhere that I stay beyond the box, but I don't go outside of the parameters of acceptable, if that makes sense.
Right, and it's more okay to talk about it this week because we've kind of cleared the trial court phase of this at this point. So we're in the process of deciding if an appeal needs to be done. But we did go to court a couple of weeks ago on a Thursday, or about a week and a couple of days ago, and we did when our attorney's fees and costs for our client over and against the other party who was found guilty of committing fraud in their seller's disclosure.
Okay, so in a nutshell, what does all of that attorney stuff mean to our listeners?
Essentially, since there was a real estate contract involved, one of the paragraphs of the real estate contract required that in the event that any lawsuit was filed, that the prevailing party would have their attorney's fees and costs paid by the other party.
Okay, but what they were, the fraud piece had to do with failure to disclose?
That's correct.
Or failure to properly disclose, or what?
In this case, it was a failure to disclose at all. Something that the seller had knowledge of but did not disclose, that was a material item to the value of the property.
And either side of that, I mean, I can see where the consumer, if not represented, may have some questions as to, do I need to include this? And like we talked about a couple of weeks ago, anything that you know about that property, you need to disclose.
Yes.
And then let the buyer or the prospective buyer decide if it's important or not.
Right.
Correct?
The general rule is that if you're reading through the disclosure and you read one of the items that's on there and you think, well, I don't know, I had this issue with the property, I don't know if it qualifies under this section or not, you either need to check yes on the box and write down what that issue that you were thinking about was, or check the unknown box. But don't check no just because you think that, just because you're not sure of whether or not you should disclose it. If that's the case,
or you think
should
it
never
may not
check
be
that.
important.
Correct.
Because what's important to you may not be important to the next person.
That's right. Or what's not important to you may be important to the next person. Either way.
Isn't that what I said? But you said it the opposite?
Could be.
Okay. 433-0092. That's 501-433-0092. If you have a question about disclosure or any other real estate matter, Kendal practices law here in Arkansas, and it's always a pleasure to have him here. On that, I was going to say, what I tell our clients, there's not a perfect home. And I recommend a home inspection. I recommend that they get a home inspection. I don't require it, but I do require them to sign something that states that I recommended that they get a home inspection, and they're well aware that they know that. However, we only know what we know. And so essentially what happens with a home inspector is they're going to point out everything that they can discover about that home that appears to be something that has come to their attention for whatever reason. It could be really minor, it could be major, okay? And then they're going to refer that or defer that point that they've made to a specialist, such as an engineer or plumbing, licensed plumber, or whatever, HVAC contractor, whatever it is. And so whenever we get a home inspection, usually it's a book, not just a small report. But if you know as a buyer that there is no perfect house, okay, and you are aware of anything that the seller knows and anything that the home inspector has discovered, then, and or any other inspectors that you've hired during your time period, then at that point, as I tell our buyer clients, you have to decide in reviewing these findings, is there anything here that you can't live with? Okay? That home inspection is not a laundry list expectation for that seller to make that home perfect, because that home is never going to be perfect, okay? But for the buyer or prospective buyer to know everything that can be revealed and been discovered, so that they can investigate further or ask questions, whatever they want to do, and get comfortable with it, is really the whole purpose of the disclosure, right?
Right. And home inspectors are not going to be an exhaustive list of everything that could be potentially wrong with the house. I mean, they're not going to do things like destructive testing. They're not going to cut holes in the sheetrock and look at things behind the sheetrock. They're not going to tear up wood floors to see if there's problems with wood floors. You know, they're not going to tear apart the roof to find out if it needs to be replaced. There's a lot of things that they're not going to do.
Right. And we'll get back to that home inspector thing, but we do have a caller. This is Steven Blackwood. You're live on the air.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I have a question. We just did a real estate transaction 3 months ago, and the seller did not offer a disclosure, and I didn't care in this particular instance, but assuming I sell a property and I check the box that seller will not provide a disclosure, is there a possibility I could still be liable for something that they think I did not disclose?
Well, I'm going to let Kendall give you the attorney answer on that, and then I'll tell you what my thoughts are.
So let me clear it up. Let me make sure I'm clear on it first. You were the seller or you were the buyer?
I was the buyer in this case, but I'm just saying, for instance, if I were a seller and I tell the buyer that I'm not going to provide a disclosure, and I check the box that says seller does not and will not provide a disclosure.
Correct. And
again, am I still liable if something were to pop up that they felt like I should have disclosed anyway?
Well, that's another one of those things that depends on what the rest of the contract says. I mean, I know what your point is about it, but as to a written disclosure, that's correct. If there's not one required, then you wouldn't be liable. It would probably be considered an as-is transaction at that point in time.
Yeah, if you're represented by an Arkansas real estate brokerage and they're using the ARA forms and they select that box, those things that you mentioned, Kendall, are going to be a part of that.
Right, but if you don't have a real estate agent involved, then it depends largely on the term of the contract, because you may have that no written disclosure is required, but if you ask a question about the house when you're walking through and you say, have you had any problems with the foundation of the home, and they say, no, we haven't had any problems, and you find out 6 months later that they had concrete poured all along one side because they'd had some serious settling issues, then yes, there may still be some liability there, even though no written disclosure was required.
Right. Okay.
So let me add something there real quick. Did you buy the property to rehab and remodel and bought it as is? Okay. So let me suggest this. You only know what you know about that property, and that's the That's the extent of obligation that you have to any prospective buyer when you get ready to sell the property. But most people are going to think, if you are refusing to provide a seller's property disclosure, that you're hiding something. So unless I'm going to speculate there's nothing that you know about that property that you would not be willing to tell me if I was the buyer.
Right.
Is that true?
I don't know if you're asking me if I were to do that. No, I was a buyer.
No, I know, but if I was going to buy it from you right now, is there anything that you know about that property that you would not want me to know?
Well, I just bought it a couple of months ago. I don't know anything about it myself yet.
Exactly. That was my point. And so in default servicing, in the event that a property is foreclosed upon or purchased at auction, those people who end up with that property, they know nothing more than whatever's advertised, okay? So there is not a disclosure provided because they simply don't know. But if you, as the consumer, have purchased a piece of property and you're making improvements on it, I would think that you would want to disclose those improvements because that gives you an opportunity to tell them everything that you did.
Yep.
I see your point.
Yeah, and then, the rule of thumb is what? Disclose, disclose, disclose. I mean, there's no reason. Most people are not going to get caught up on any kind of details, and the more they know, the better. The more comfortable they are, and the more they'll enjoy that house when you get ready to sell it.
And we talked about it a couple of weeks ago as well, that a disclosure can add value to the property if you make a full disclosure. If you're unwilling to make a disclosure when you sell the property, if you just flat out say, I'm not going to make a disclosure in the contract, it may affect the marketability and the value of the property. So that's why there's an assumption out there that if you refuse to give a disclosure, that that people are going to assume that there's something wrong with it.
Well, I would definitely be a little suspicious, to say the least, if I were buying particularly a residential property and they were not going to disclose. I would be a little suspect of that. But I thought this property was a commercial property, and I don't know why. I didn't see the need for it, and he chose not to disclose, and so far, so good. But
so, Bob, I would say I bought and sold a lot of property, rehabbed, built, everything else, and, if my knowledge is limited, like what you're describing here, then I would certainly explain that in writing on the property disclosure, that I've shared what I know and or relied on what had been provided me to a previous owner, if anything. So you're kind of letting them know, hey, this is what I know, but I really don't know much. And then that way you've done the best you can. Now, I guess the court would have to decide if that was adequate at the long haul if there was a problem. But that's a great